Okay, I think we are starting to get ready. So please take a seat. Take a seat and enjoy yourselves. So as I said, the last panel discussion of today will be about the topic of the future of our beloved university, Aalto University. The ambitious goal of the school has been since the day one to reach the academic world class. So how has the journey been so far, and what's in the horizon?
These questions will be revealed by our dynamic duo, famous Kylteri, the student magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Markus and Stella.
Thank you, Katarina and Alexander. Let's ask our panelists on the stage. Our first panelist holds a bachelor degree from Aalto University and is about to graduate from Harvard Kennedy School. He has been the president and the secretary general of the National Union of University Students in Finland, and he is also running for the Finnish parliament this spring. Please welcome Matti Parpala. Our second panelist is the president of Aalto University. Prior to Aalto, she was the vice president of the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Please welcome Tuula Teeri.
Originally from Canada but arrived to Finland in 1998, our next panelist is currently a professor of practice at Aalto University School of Science, focusing on high-growth entrepreneurship. Please welcome Peter Kelly. And finally, we have the Dean of Aalto University School of Business. He holds a PhD from the Hanken School of Economics and has taught a number of business schools in Europe and Asia. Please welcome Ingmar Björkman. So today, the theme here at the symposium has been risk and reward in its different ways. When Aalto University was founded, three quite different schools were combined into one. And one might say that this was quite a risky decision. First, we'd like to ask our panelists, what were the risks that were considered when forming Aalto? And maybe Tuula can start the best insight into this.
Well, I guess one way of putting this is that, from the viewpoint of Finland, I think you could ask, what would have been the risk if Aalto wasn't founded? Because it's supposed to give an opportunity for the Finnish economy, to diversify and come up with new kind of businesses to replace those that we are losing for various paradigm shift reasons. What we were considering as a very big risk, we were discussing it also in the backstage a little bit, that the risk for Aalto is kind of two different things that you can think risky. One of them is that we failed to unite the different fields. And it doesn't look like we've been doing it now for 5 years, and this risk does not seem very real at the moment. I think there's a lot of, activities and also sort of bottom-up activities where people find each other around this theme of uniting the competencies. And then the second risk that seems to be very real is that the government interest in funding this initiative is kind of ceasing at some point. We can discuss more about it later on. But I mean, this is always a real risk for the university operations, whether a new university or old. That there is this up and down funding, which is fatal for university success.
This was a risk that we were considering when Aalto was founding already back then. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Matti, you were the chairman of Helsinki Business Student Union back then, and what risks do you think business students saw in the formation of Aalto back then?
That's a good question, and thanks for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here. So, I think there were a few risks. I think Tuula mentioned already kind of the academic risk. Will this succeed or not? And the also financial risk. How well will this cope with the kind of pressures from the state finance, state budgeting and all that. But I think identity risk is one of the biggest risks that was also present heavily when Aalto was created. And I think we're still not kind of completely over that yet. There were three schools with very different identities, kind of different aspirations. They had already kind of established themselves as well-known public universities, and then you try to kind of get rid of the tree and create something new, it's always a very risky process. And I think Aalto is on a good path in creating that identity, but there's still work to go.
Indeed. Looking at the situation now, what risk can be seen now? Ingmar or Peter, do you have any insight?
Well, I just want to echo a couple of comments because I've been here now, Matti was asking, since '98. And I've been educated at rich institutions, public institutions, private institutions. And I absolutely believe, and I had an initiative going where I had the 3 university presidents who were effectively merging themselves out of jobs. So we had some and I was backed by the major private donor of Aalto in this project. And so we had some very major, interesting discussions before Tula was appointed and we created Aalto University. And I'm often asked, A, is it an experiment worth doing? Absolutely. But B, I think it's important to note that the world has not stood still as Aalto has been created. This may come as a shock to people. I just did a quick bit of background research, and since Matti's from Harvard, and as Marco is a friend from Harvard, the top 10 universities in the world combined have 120 billion in endowments. And if I did some back math for Harvard, just to give you an idea of what the game is like, Harvard's endowment is so large, if they it actually is $1.5 million per student. And if they wanted to, they could give students free tuition. So effectively, our competitor is Harvard. And actually, I've just heard today that Harvard is launching another $6.5 billion funding campaign, which is already 2/3 full.
It was 2/3 full almost when they launched it.
When they launched it. And so this is the kind of game that we have to learn to play here. And I'm very happy to see that the government stepped up and said, I think they were genuinely surprised that the government said, good idea, and we have an endowment, but now we need to figure out, teeing off of what Marco said, some more experiments to discover this identity, because there are 3 very different cultures being brought together, which is a huge challenge with the merger. But I think the fun is going to begin now.
If I can add, one risk, for which I feel currently, is really like you said that, the world has not stood still, and we have a really unique concept, but not for long, because we have a lot of people that are copying us. And the other thing is that, also the other universities are evolving really fast, with their strategies and their structures and their competitiveness, So my kind of worry is that we said 10 years to world class, and now I'm asking, are we going to be fast enough? Because it's really like this Alice in the Wonderland that, if we are going to even stay still, we have to run faster all the time. So that's the challenge that we get this next 5 years, we maintain the speed and we do the things we decided to do. And even then it's going to be a challenge whether we are fast enough.
If I may echo what already has been said here, going back 5 years, I wasn't here as a part of Aalto University, but still what I see today and what I saw then as the risk was that, yes, additional resources being brought in, but the schools continue to operate like before. I think it's quite clear that a lot has happened. A lot has been created, and it may not be seen here in Finland, but globally today, Aalto is seen as the prime example of a university doing things differently. And what we see today is other universities, other leading business schools copying what we are doing. So for us to continue to be on the path towards world class, we need to continue to raise our level of ambition, and we need to continue to innovate in terms of what we're doing. It's not the time to say that, okay, we made it. We'll have to continue to work faster, work harder and harder, and smarter in the years ahead.
But you would say that the founding of Aalto was worth the risk?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How about others?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Tastes better every day.
Well, how about the future? You already discussed a little, but what are the big risks worth taking at Aalto and Aalto Biz in the future, maybe in the next few years?
But we're going to focus. That's a kind of risk taking as well, you know, because I mean the thing is, like it was mentioned, Harvard was mentioned, you know, MIT is mentioned. I mean, MIT has the budget which is as big as the budget of the entire Finnish university sector. So and they have. I think they have 1,000 professors, which is 3 times more than we do. They have 5 times the budget compared to us, and they have less students than we do. So in size we can't compete. So we have to be smarter, you know. So we have to find things, you know, to do which others haven't discovered yet. And this is a genuine challenge, you know, because I mean we can't fake it. Either we are first, or then we are pretending to be first, which is when we can't move, you know. So to really genuinely focus on the things which we believe in and take the risk, you know, to choose things where we are not sure if it's going to work out. Go to new areas, you know, do bold moves, you know, that's what we need to do.
I think there's some risk coming also from the kind of national level university politics and politics in general. We have the discourse when you talk university politics in Finland is always that you have to have all universities everywhere teaching everything, researching everything. And the risk is that we try to play the numbers business where we can't do that. So we should try to concentrate our resources to where it is the most, where the resources are in the most efficient use. And I think that's a risk for Aalto if the national decision makers don't get that point.
I think already now it should be known to everyone here that we don't need to go to the US, to MIT, Stanford, Harvard, to recognize the fact that we are still today under-resourced. If you compare the business school with Stockholm School of Economics, Norwegian School of Economics, we have more students and less resources. So per student, we have less resources already today, and now there is a discussion about reducing the resources of our university in the years ahead. So we need to be even smarter, work even harder in the years ahead to stay ahead.
In my view, you know, one of the thoughts is that, you know, I mean, yes, the university policies is what it is, you know, but I think that still, you know, the same strategy applies that, you know, if we are unbeatable, you know, then I think it will increase our chances of actually earning our funding. But the problem is, of course, that, you know, this is a slow game, you know, for earning the funding, you know. So, and again, the risk is, are we fast enough, and how quickly can we win the funding?
And Marco mentioned this word counterintuitive. I've got another counterintuitive example for you. I'm a graduate of the #2 business school in the world. There's only one above it, which is Harvard. One of my colleagues was over doing a visit and did a speech for us, and we were catching up over coffee, and I shared with him a thought about a Darwinian course I would like to create inside Aalto where students would fail. And this guy I've known for 15 plus years smiled and said something rather striking to me. He said, "Peter, I would love to do that kind of course at our business school. However, we'll never be able to put in the curriculum because we're #2. And I actually think this rankings game, the higher up in the rankings you get, the more conservative you are. And I would actually challenge, I think the imaginative space Aalto should be in, should be taking the stuff that we feel positively should be done, that the people like Stanford, MIT, and Harvard find difficult to do. And they have reputational risk. And I guess we have to get this message across to the government that they should also be funding imagination a bit more.
Aalto aims to be a top world-class university, but what does this really mean? Tuula, would you like to start?
What does it mean? You know, I mean, the thing is that, first of all, you know, there is no, I mean, I've actually really been looking at, you know, there's not really another university that has the same strategy as Aalto. There are universities that have business and technology and design, but there are no other universities that have this as a specific strategy. Maybe one sort of dawning in Singapore, you know, which is kind of initiated by MIT, but even that is not quite the same. And so we can't really be compared to anyone as a university. And in a side sentence, you know, I say I don't think universities should be compared because I mean they are not similar. I mean if you think of MIT and Aalto or Helsinki University, they are all very different. But what we can do, you know, is that we can look at our different areas, we can compare our business people, with other business entities in other universities, and that's how we can get benchmarks, to certain parts of the university. And so that is really one really good way of sort of putting the bar in the right place, to say that, okay, we are as good as DTU in technology, we are as good as Rotterdam, in business, we are better than this and that and the other, in design, So to sort of say that at this point of development, we say, who would we like to be? Who is it that, we are comparing each other? What is the bigger challenge is that, I'm saying that, that's fine for these first 10 years, but now we have to start thinking about, where do we want to lead? And again, so then it means that, where are we going to be number one? And I don't think that this is unrealistic with the strategy that we have. But it does require some thinking and strategy and real hard work, like Inku was saying.
Well, what about Inku? How do we know when Aalto really is a world-class university?
It's actually quite difficult. If you look at our main tasks, teaching, learning on the part of students, that to me is the number one, the first and the foremost thing. That's our most important mission. Then we have academic research and we have contribution to society. So how do you measure or build an understanding of whether or not you're really world-class, number one, number 10, blah, blah. When it comes to academic research, it's fairly easy, fairly valid. You can look at publications in top journals. You can look at the impact through citations. How much do you really impact on the way in which academic knowledge is being brought forward? When it comes to teaching, learning on the part of students, the measures are like, okay, what's the salary level? But then obviously you make the assumption that graduates in all parts of the world have equal opportunities to make money, firstly. And then secondly, you make the assumption that that's what is most important for our graduates, which is an assumption that I don't think holds for all of us. You can ask, well, to what extent are the aims of the educational program met? That's being asked by, for instance, Financial Times. And last year, we were number 25 in the world in terms of graduates after 3 years responding to this question, comparing our master's program with that of master's programs in different parts of the world. And then we look at societal impact, again, extremely difficult. So we should contribute first and foremost through our graduates, our students. But of course, we work with corporations, we contribute to societal debates, we influence lawmaking, and so on and so on. To put a number on this is tricky. And we need to be holistic. And we need to work with all these areas. And if there are rankings, and there are rankings, we should be very concerned, very explicit about the limitations of these rankings. That was a long answer, but it's a difficult question.
I think another sort of measure, which is not a number, is to say that everybody talks about us, because then what that means, is a sort of reputation aspect. Everybody wants to study at Aalto, everybody wants to work at Aalto, everybody wants to partner with us. And I mean, the thing is that we're not yet quite world class, but this is already starting to happen. I mean, tell Inku your numbers, for the master programs.
Last week was the deadline for applications to the business school, and we were up by 80% compared to last year in terms of applications to our business school.
Our design factory is being copied. I think it's in 5 different locations around the world at the moment, and there are more requests all the time. So it is. I mean, it's, even though you can't put a number on the reputation, but it is genuinely very important. That we are known as a world-class university, which means that people want to come and work with us.
And I think this is a very good example. It's easiest to be world-class when you do something unique, and so that's why we need to be smart.
Yep.
So why is it important for us business students that the Aalto School of Business is a world-class business school? Ingmar, if you would like to begin.
So why it's important?
Why is it important for us?
Well, the better reputation of the school, obviously, if you now take really a human capital perspective, the higher value on the labor market for our graduates. So it's important for each and every one how the school is being seen, because you have better job opportunities, better opportunities to do things in Finland, but also globally. So therefore, things like the Financial Times ranking. We may disagree with many of the criteria, with the metrics and so on, but it's still of some importance. The accreditations, the fact that we have a triple crown shared, 3 accreditations shared by some 65 business schools worldwide in terms of having a 5-year accreditation. Those are important things for the value of our students. And of course, hopefully people are also, students are proud of the fact that we are doing well and we are seen as being doing well. And it helps us attract faculty members. That's important as well. Why would somebody getting a PhD from the US or having a professorship in Germany want to join us? They want to join a very, very good business school. And this is a huge change compared to 5 years ago. 5 years ago, there was less than one professor with a foreign passport in the business school. Now, a good third of those that we recruit have a foreign passport, and many of the others, they work internationally, have professorships internationally. And this is partly driven by our reputation.
The other thing with this, why is it important for the student, to have that question, talks about the Finnish culture of thinking of education, because we think that if you have a master or business master or whatever, master in technology or diploma engineer, if you have it in so it's the same degree depending on which university you get it. This is not the case globally, and many of our students are going to work abroad, so it's important for them in the future that they can say that they have a degree from Aalto University in Finland, not just any Finnish university.
And if I could actually interject, as an MBA PhD from a business school, last week I was just given a visiting appointment as a professor of design. I think the design element inside Aalto is one of the most interesting areas where business schools are exploring how do we integrate this into our curriculum. And the one advantage we have at Aalto, being sort of a newcomer to the game, is we have a bit more freedom to play with some of these variables than some of these top 20, top 30, top 40 schools globally. But if I were to give you some career advice, the number of companies who are chasing me to learn about design thinking, which is, Marco and I are very good friends, is huge. And that you ought to build in your curriculum. And Aalto is one of these special places to do that. And we have people like Kalevi Ekman who just make these collisions happen. It's massive. You would become instantly employable if you can somehow put that in, integrate that. And I think that may be an explanation as to why many of these 80% increase to a business school is the proximity of a design.
I think one part of the culture that maybe hopefully is changing little by little is that we tend to, at least among the students, you often hear the kind of notion that, yeah, it was so easy to complete this business school, like this is a children's play school and it's so easy, which kind of, I know like the purpose of that saying is to kind of promote that I was so good that it was easy for me. But the way you could turn that is that, or I think we should more begin to talk about our studies, like about the challenging parts as well, and kind of try to also self-promote our institution where we did the learning. And that way we also in the long term improve or increase the value of the degree in the labor market.
There were a question from the audience, thank you, for Peter and Matti. What things are better in Aalto compared to Harvard?
What things are better in Aalto compared to Harvard? Actually, there's a lot. There's an awful lot. What you don't realize when you join a faculty, I was teaching for University of Notre Dame, a top 20 ranked school. There's an unbelievable conservatism when you have a customer paying as much money as they do in tuition, and they take time making decisions. It may not look like it, but once they've made a decision, the imprint stays. And somebody at Harvard actually told me innovation happens at Harvard one academic death or retirement at a time, which is true. And the foresight inside Aalto is when we had to go out and scope out new professors, and I'm a professor of practice, which suits me to a T, this is the kind of mix that you can do new things. These are people who've never worked together, and they're finding ways to work together, and you can shape new things. That's our advantage. Trying to do something new inside an established institution in the US, big challenge. Failing a student in the US, you need a lawyer to sign off. And I'm not kidding. You need a lawyer to sign off because you're likely going to get sued. The parents who've paid are going to say, why did you fail my son or my daughter out of this class? And there's an incredible degree of this bureaucracy you don't see. And you got to keep that in mind.
I think I definitely agree. So in Aalto, the kind of momentum of change, that is something pretty unique, and that you don't sense as much. I think there's a lot of buzz in Harvard as well, of course. But I think for if you think it from perspective of prospective student or a prospective researcher at the university, I think this institution offers opportunities that are not present in many other universities. Grade inflation definitely, or at least my grades could be inflated a little bit if I look at my bachelor's grades. We don't have that as much in Finland, and I think that's definitely a positive thing. It's basically impossible to get worse than a B or B minus from a course, even though the scale goes all the way down to E and F. It's basically impossible to get a C even. I think what we do have here, student activity, student culture in Finland is also something unique, or definitely different from what is it in Harvard. The student government in the at least graduate schools, but also in the undergraduate level is nothing compared to ours. And then also I think universities in Finland. Of course, this is a cultural thing, and it has its downsides as well. But I think universities are also a place to learn to live more than they are in the U.S. When you join when you join a college at Harvard, you're 18, 19. You're pretty much a child yet. Like parents choose parents choose the university for their kids. Also in terms of like what type of housing there is available, how well is it monitored, like what's the security, food, everything like that. In here, people actually kids become independent already at the age of 18, 19, and I think universities play a big part in that, and I think that's really a positive and tells something about our society as well.
What about the other way around? Matti, you are just about to graduate from Harvard, and based on your experience, you've written a 12-step guide on how you see Aalto should be improved. And you write that Aalto students should demand more from their university and teachers. What do you mean by this?
I think there should be, so it should be reciprocal. I think both the students and both the faculty should kind of throw themselves more into the studies world as well. So I think, as I mentioned, the student culture is very strong here, but I think the student culture could benefit for a little bit of enhancement of also the studying part. So I think there's like we talk here a lot about how the Harvard endowment is so big, and it's a fact we're never gonna have such an endowment in Aalto. But there are a lot of things that you could do for free. You could, just by kind of changing of attitude towards studies, how well the students are committed to completing their studies in 3 years or in 2 years if it's a master's program, how well the teachers and professors are committed to getting to know their students, actually kind of wanting to interact also outside of class. I think there are a lot of things that you could do relatively cheaply and with relatively low time expense as well.
I think that we if you compare to Harvard, and I actually had this chance to visit MIT. I didn't visit Harvard, but I think we really when you say that you have to study hard, I think we have to also teach harder than what we are doing at the moment, and it has to do also with, that Finnish universities are burdened by a lot of students, but because we don't really teach hard enough or we don't take good care of our students, a lot of the students are kind of drifting, which means that we have lots of students that we don't know where they are. And we've actually done the numbers, with Ilkka Niemela, our provost, we've looked at it, and, we say that, if we only look at, the full-time students and if we take good care of our students, it actually doesn't require that we have a huge endowment. We can do much better job even with the current resources. And that kind of is like that, in United States, the students are taken very good care of because they are considered customers. Yeah. But in Finland, I don't think we consider our students customers, but we consider our students partners, which is an even more, careful relationship, where we see that, we're kind of building the future of Finland together. And it's for us important, that we give good education because we believe that this will lead to a good future to Finland. But I do think that we have to both study hard and teach hard.
It seems to me that learning is really an outcome of two things. Student investments in their learning, and then the extent to which we as faculty members and staff in general in the business school and the university support the students in terms of their learning. And when it comes to the latter part, there have been, I would argue, quite considerable changes. We are in the middle of, and quite far along, I think, a path of going from teaching to providing learning opportunities by putting students in challenging situations where they have to learn. So doing projects, doing cases, real cases. So you have somebody coming in and presenting a problem, and you have time to work on that problem, analyzing that problem, coming up with solutions, and then presenting that to corporate reps or whoever. And so it's partly a question of us as a community working on trying to improve this, but partly also in terms of what we already have done in terms of not only research, but teaching equally much being what we evaluate professors and scholars on. So for a professor today to get a permanent position, they have to have a high quality in both research and teaching. And you can even get a permanent position by having high quality in research if you're excellent in terms of teaching. So teaching has been lifted a lot in Aalto compared to the role of teaching before for faculty members.
Yeah, just to continue a little bit on what's been said, but it's a mistake to think that for example the size of the class matters as much as we tend to think. No. Like my classes at Kennedy have been pretty much the same size as I had in some master studies or bachelor studies here, like 60 to 80, even 90 people. But still, the amount of engagement that both the students, how much the students demand from the professor, how much the professor demands from the students, is much more. It's much higher there. And there are very simple things that they do. For example, every student has to have a name tag always with them. Mm-hmm. So it's easy for a professor when you're kind of snoozing after a hard night at the class. Like it's easy for you to be called and asked, like, Matti, what do you think about this? And then you kind of like scramble and answer if you don't know. But you are put in a spot if you don't seem to concentrate as well as you should. And also it's possible for the professors to get to know you better when they always see your name when you talk, and also yeah. And then another thing is that the use of laptops in class is pretty much always discouraged, so that people are basically not allowed to do anything else but to take notes, and that also increases the lot of concentration and the level of engagement at the class quite a bit. And these things don't cost anything.
They've covered it all.
But as already mentioned, Aalto is quite a young school and can't compete financially with the budgets of top universities like Harvard or MIT. So what are the world-class universities that Aalto is actually competing with? I want names.
Names?
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of rankings. Because, and having been at a school where rankings, the dean was awarded a bonus on his salary based on where he was in the rankings. It's a contractual part of his deal. Because rankings drive you to play somebody else's game, and you all look the same. And if Aalto wants to look the same as everybody else, that's not a game to me worth playing. I would flip a counterintuitive into this. We ought to be so imaginary taking on some of these interesting challenges to create a presence globally that suddenly we appear to lift up in the rankings. I'd like to see that we create our own ranking. That, when this was created, I said I hated the word university. I'm a creativity teacher. You put university in, you think programs, professors, administration, buildings, endowments. I wouldn't have called it a university because you're already putting a frame of mind in as to what one of these things looks like. And with the executive teaching I do, a lot of companies have this problem. They'd like to do new, different stuff, and they're big bureaucracies. Universities are looking very tired and old in terms of their structure. She has a very difficult job. Can you imagine a committee with a bunch of highly intelligent colleagues who are opinionated and want to speak their voice, coming to a consensus about anything? And I've been floating an idea. Where's the experimental playground? Inside your company, inside the university, where you're allowed to play and discover new routines. That's what I do. And I've been floating this idea around. I didn't ask for her permission to do this. And guess what? A couple of major companies said, this is a very good idea. Let's do it. And she's going to hear about this in due time. But this is about unstructured challenges. I'm an entrepreneurship guy. There's no point in putting a case in front of you people with all the data that you had. You're creating new stuff. There's no data. And I throw you into cold water and see if you can sink or swim. And I see at least one of my students in here. It's deadly uncomfortable for business students because they want a detailed brief. And I said, no, you're going to create one. And you're going to pique my imagination. And we're going to do this together as a collaborator. And I think Aalto is one of these very unique environments to do this.
I mean, the introduction to strategy, if you go to the core of strategy, is about differentiation. If you are operating the same way as everybody else, you can never get a sustainable competitive advantage. So we should do things differently. The what and the how should be different. In terms of the outcomes, we can and should compare ourselves to others. So in terms of research, we should compare ourselves to leading players. And as a business school, we'll look at the best schools in Europe, in our area. We'll look at Rotterdam, as we said. In the Nordics, Stockholm School of Economics is our closest competitor and benchmark and so on. But we should be different. We should dare to be different, and we should dare to take risks.
I can give you a couple of names. I mean, with the same motivation, I actually agree with both of you. And what I say that if you go back to the Harvard and say what are they better at than Aalto is, so they are better in research quality at the moment, and that is something that we have to take very seriously. And I think again, we did an application to the Finnish Academy where we looked at our publication record with the current faculty, and there's some technical details why usually the rankings don't do it like this. But if we look at that, we're actually really well on the way to the world class. But we need to look at how did other universities build up this research excellence, which also is very, very important for the teaching quality. And in the technological field, we say that DTU, Technical University of Denmark, is one benchmark, and EPFL in Switzerland is another benchmark. Why are they benchmarks for us? They are benchmarks because they started from where we were in 2010, and in 10 years they went to world class. So it's worthwhile to look at and compare us a little bit. What kind of tools did they use to achieve this? And they used tenure track, and they used educational reforms, and what they didn't do is they didn't use design factory yet, Yes. So we are ahead of them in that.
Yeah. Okay, so teaching and research and endowment and all these things, teaching reforms, talking about becoming a top world-class university, is a world-class university only defined by the quality of teaching and research, what part do you think students play in establishing a world-class university? Matti, what do you feel?
I think students play an essential part. Like as we all know, students are pretty much the most lasting piece of what comes out of university. It's 40 years of professional career or more than that likely for us, and that's where the change happens. If you're able to orchestrate the kind of process where the student starts in a university and comes out and probably continues learning and continues to interact with the university, that's where the big impact on the society can happen. One single idea seldom changes the world, but there are people, a bunch of graduates from Aalto can do quite a difference if they start to organize. And I think that's why the investments in students and investment in the kind of creating the community, Aalto community, is something that's essential.
You know, without the students, we would not be a university. We would be a research institute. I mean, every students are everything. You know, that's kind of like, you know, the start and the end of a university. You know, I mean, if we don't get good students, you know, then we will be not educating good experts into the society, and we are not going to do that. You know, who cares about the research? I mean, the whole point is that, you know, the dissemination happens through the students. That's the absolute main pathway. Innovations are great, you know, and we can get kind of like for the next 10 years we can do something really wonderful, you know, but it really is the dissemination by the students, just like you said, you know, I mean, there's no university without students.
And students learn together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
The
only
whole
the
community.
faculty member
Yeah.
and the individual student. A very important part of this is students, teams,
Yes.
and also socially. So that's clear. Raising the level of ambition as well. The better students, the higher level of ambition you can get. And then finally, a really important part of what a good business school does is to create social capital among students that they can build on later in life. So it's not only human capital in terms of the learning, the skills, the knowledge, and so on, but building relationships. And this is capital. This is social capital. Extremely important if you think of doing a master's or a PhD at Harvard or doing an MBA at Stanford or instead.
I think one more thing to add maybe is kind of keeping the connection between the former students and the university also later in life. I know that Aalto's been building the alumni network, and I think frankly there's still some way to go to get the alumni network to also do something else to raise money. I think raising money is definitely important, but I think the knowledge interchange that could happen between the alumni and the university also later in work career and so could be much higher. I think in general in the Finnish society we would need more people who flow between different sectors, between academics to politics to business to non-profit sector, and that's what you see. That's something that you see a lot in Harvard. Some call it, especially Kennedy School, it's called sometimes Washington D.C. North, because there are so many people that kind of flow during different governments. They flow back and forth between the university and Washington, and that creates a huge amount of knowledge about what actually happens in the real world to inside the faculty, and that's very, very valuable.
So alumni networks, knowledge interchange, social capital. I had the honor to sit with Ingmar, you at the panel discussion on the first day of the semester at the business school, and you told the new business school students that the most important thing for their studies is to concentrate on studying and pursue a position on the dean's list instead of working or volunteering during their studies. I asked you about this particularly and said that maybe business students may work during summer, but it would be useful if they would still study during summer. Is studying the only thing that the students of a world-class top university should be doing?
Hopefully not, but I do think that if you think of our 3+2 system, bachelor's and master's, that it makes sense for students to focus on their studies at least at the bachelor level. If you look at leading universities and what students do there, they basically focus on their studies during the terms. Then I think when you come to the master's level, then there is a stronger argument for saying that, okay, with the basics you have, what you bring with you into working life, there combining what you have learned and what you are learning continuously with working makes more sense than early on in your studies.
Any thoughts on this?
Actually, education is the experience business. It has a residential experience, it has a classroom experience, it has a personal development experience. And curious thing, when my boss at the School of Science said to me, Peter, you're going to say yes to this. I want you to do a networking masterclass for every incoming first-year student in the bachelor's program at the School of Science. It's fabulous. I said, and I say this from personal experience, you have to network. This is a network. And not only within the School of Business, but you've got a fabulous diversity of skills across this university. And these first years kind of took it on, and part of that is spending time in courses, and part of that is spending time and hounding down some professors. We love to talk. My door's always open. I have very good coffee in my office. And you make the most of it. So you've got to kind of empower yourself. But you're here to get education, skills, learn a bit more about yourself. And after the end of the experience, after 5 years, I think you get a better feel of how we want to empower you to make an impact in the world for something that has meaning to you. But this is why it's so important to get alumni engagement. Every school I've been in, alumni are kind of the first go-to people to say, I have a dream. How do you make a dream into reality? And it's a very personal decision, and you talk to your faculty, you talk to your friends. And I fret sometimes that people don't know the power of this network. I'm doing a networking masterclass tomorrow as a pitch. I do this with executive MBAs, and one guy said to me, that was the best thing I've ever had in the MBA program. Because this is an experience, and you have to leverage it.
Tuula, do you feel that bachelor's level students should only concentrate on their studies?
Well, you make it sound like some kind of a boring obligation, you know. And I do think that, I do hope that, in this spirit, that we can offer an education which is so compelling that you can't stop studying, because, it really is, you can't learn things without engagement, If you take it with your left hand, you're not going to learn the things, and then you're not going to be competitive at the work market or whatever. So I hope that we can offer education which is sort of inviting your passion, to learn. And then what else you do, during that study time, yes, you can fall in love and you can have a family and things, but you should focus on your studies when you're studying. This is your unique opportunity to learn something, to live your dream. And I do think it's very important, and I don't think it should be felt like, that, oh, it's so boring that I have to also study.
Matti, I believe you have some experiences in this.
Yeah, this is the unsurprising talk about. So I think you definitely should pursue the dean's list if that's your thing. Do it if that's your thing. But I think there's a lot as well. So this community and this experience of studying is such unique thing that I think you should take the most out of it, and you are the only one who knows what's the most out of it for you. And it might be something, it might be the dean's list if that's your orientation. It might be creating an awesome network and becoming a government affairs specialist or some other person who benefits hugely on the network. I think there's a lot of kind of middle ground between taking studies on your left hand and only concentrating on studies. I think that there's a lot of middle ground, and I think what could be done in Aalto University is kind of to help students, especially in the undergraduate phase, to kind of face this challenge and how to use your time in the most effective way. I think that's where the university could also step in maybe a little more than it does currently and help students in that.
Picking up on Matti, I think there's just one quick thing I would add. There's no better time in your life to take risks than where you are right now.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I encourage it, because this is, it's an entrepreneurship educator. It's all about taking risk. It's all about putting yourself out and open to fail as a learning experiment, not failure as a personal stigma. And I love people that are curious, who travel a lot, who work with different disciplines. these are people employers want to hire. And they want people who are prepared to take calculated risks. And this is something that I've been teasing out with some of the companies, and they have trouble dealing with this inside, but they really want people with this kind of mindset. And I think this is a place and the time to do it. Because once you get into a job and you get married and you have a house and a mortgage, you get very conservative and your day schedule starts looking pretty packed. I wish I had the time and freedom you guys do.
Thank you.
Honestly.
Before our last question, we'll have a question from the audience. What are the biggest risks for Aalto in the next years when business school moves to Otaniemi? What roles do students play in this, and how can we avoid the risks or the failures? Maybe Ingmar can start.
I mean, certainly one thing that we are thinking a lot about is how to create a community feeling in Otaniemi. How to make sure that faculty members spend enough time with students and so on. And basically the idea is that when a professor, a lecturer is teaching, he or she should be more available than what they have been so far in Töölö. So basically the idea that at least I have is that related to every lecture, there is a sort of a norm that the faculty member is lingering around immediately after each session. So there is, if you look at Harvard, if you look at Stanford, if you look at INSEAD, that's when much of the interaction takes place. You have a session, and you stay on to chat, to discuss with the faculty members. And I think this is going to be important. And then secondly, obviously, it's important that we spend enough time there. Personally, I'll move partly to Otaniemi after next summer. I'll, as a general rule, spend 2 days out of 5 in Otaniemi in the future.
I don't see this as a burden at all. I think networking is facilitated in proximity. So you got to be close. Networking is a very proximity-oriented game. And the fact that I calculated, or had a student calculate, it's a 19-kilometer elastic band around all the campuses of Aalto. 19 kilometers long. And if you think the business school is a big move, the design school is an even bigger one. And it's a huge space and a huge messy place. But universities in the United States are compact things for a reason. That's a very interesting design variable. Collisions happen when people are close. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity. Great opportunity.
A great opportunity. Tula, do you see any risks?
Well, no, I can't see any. I mean, let's say that, now I'm talking as the president of the university. So from my point of view, this is just an opportunity, a great opportunity. And I don't think that, the sort of perceived risk at the moment, for the business school is going to be real, because I believe, like Peter, that, the proximity is going to be what we need to become Aalto community. And I think that, the thing is that we had quite a lot of discussions in the early days when we were discussing about the design school moving to the Otaniemi, which was a dead place. And the kind of thing is that, what we want to do is to make a real difference, to the campus, so that it's not a dead place, that it actually also looks like what we feel Aalto should be. So I think, and the thing is, I mean, from the business school students, it's always said that, downtown Helsinki is a good place because there's so much business. But there's also 800 companies just around Aalto University in Otaniemi. There may be different companies that are in Helsinki, but they are definitely there. So the question, it's a kind of a challenge, How do we make Otaniemi a place which is a fantastic place also for the business students, design students, all our students?
The president of Aalto can't see any risks. How about you, Matti? Looking from the outside a bit, can you see any risks?
I think there's definitely of course there are risks. Of course there are risks of integration not happening even though the campus is in one place. I basically never crossed the river to HBS even though I'm 100-200 meters from that. because if you have no class there, then it just doesn't necessarily happen naturally. But of course there are a lot of opportunities around the campus, and you just have to make sure, especially I think the most important thing is to make it happen in the undergraduate phase, so that already when people come into Aalto, they kind of learn the habit of going and taking classes in different faculties and not kind of getting just glued up on one part of the campus. I think that's important, and to mix the student groups as well. I think that's definitely an opportunity when you have everyone on the same campus.
Thank you for the very exciting conversation. To conclude, we would like to hear, what would you like to read as the next Helsingin Sanomat newspaper headline about Aalto? Ingvar, you can start.
Wow. No pressure.
I can't come up with anything really nice, but I'll come back to what I said before. I think the students are by far the most important thing, the learning on the part of students. So whatever related to the student experiences and what they take away from the university, that's what I would like to have in the headline. That's more important than research or something of that kind.
I'll pick up on that. I would like to read that the bachelor student feedback is the best in Finland. That's the heading I really would like to see.
I'd like to see the next Facebook or next world-known innovation coming from the students of Aalto.
And I have to be rather selfish. I think what Finland needs and what Aalto needs is a little playpen to experiment. And I say that to the government as well, because a lot of the challenges that Marco talked about, these design variables, you need to go in places to suspend your strategy and suspend all your assumptions and let people creatively play. And what I've been doing with students tells me that the Aalto students are great at doing this, and they need to be doing more of this.
Thank you very much for our panelists. It's been hugely exciting. Give a big hand.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This
We're
was
done
the
here.
final panel of our.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
These
There's
were
a
really,
lot of intelligence on stage and a lot of sitting poses like this.
yeah,
I
a
noticed.
lot of interesting insights
Yes.
for the future of Aalto.
Yeah. Okay, so this was the last thing that happened here today. We'll continue our vivid discussions and debates, hopefully, on Apollo Cafe, where we have tables exclusively for us and a student-friendly drinks, prices of drinks. Tomorrow, we'll meet you guys here, same stage, same time, 10 a.m.
Yes. Until then, have a great night. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.